Hello, everybody, and welcome into a special episode of the Hockey Writers Roundtable, our draft coverage here at the Hockey Writers. I've got Jacob, Billington, and Dayton Reimer joining me here. We're just finishing up the draft, which also had a bunch of trades on the second day. The first round didn't see many big ones, but second round to the seventh round, early on, second and third round, where all these trades happened. But Dayton, Jacob, how's it going?
It's going great.
It's
It's been a
good.
great day.
It's been crazy. I think I'm gonna take a nap after we record this, but it's been a go doing the breaking news and also throughout draft here. Dayton, I know you manned the draft tracker throughout. Got the picks up really quick, and our profiles, we had quite a few of them and also quite a few left, which always happens every year. We do all these. We don't know if they're going to be drafted or not, but they end up being out there, and they have a chance to get drafted next year too. So let's start with some of the trades that happened. We'll start with the biggest one, arguably the biggest one, and that would be Mikhail Sergachev going from the Tampa Bay Lightning to Utah, which Utah was very busy, and it looks like their owners wanted to hit the ground running, have a really good team to start it, and they made their picks, which and then also got Sergachev. So I'll start with you, Jacob. What do you think about that trade? I mean, Tampa Bay obviously wants to create some money to go out a run for Stamkos again, which looks like he's going to enter the market, but I'm sure they still want to get him back. Frees up a lot of cap. What'd you think about that trade?
I think it was a fantastic trade for for both teams, really. From the Tampa side, you get JJ Moser, who's going to be an NHL player right away. I'm a huge fan of what JJ Moser brings to the lineup. He's an RFA right now, so he doesn't have a contract. He's going to need a new deal. I don't know what that's going to look like. If it's just going to be a 1 or 2 year cheap deal, or if they lock him up, kind of like they did with Nick Paul and do look at 6 or 7 years at 3 or 4 million and just try and get some consistency in there. They get Connor Geekie, who's a fantastic prospect, a second round pick in the seventh. Those are great options. And they used the pick to draft Noah Steen. I think Noah Steen is a great prospect. I think that he a little bit underrated. So I think Tampa did really good. Really sucks having to clear cap space and trading Mikhail Sergachev. He had a phenomenal year before his injuries, but I I don't know what they're trying to do because they didn't really step up their offer. The last offer that they made to Steven Stamkos was 8 years at 3 million,
Yeah,
which I think is hilarious. Um, but a bunch of reports coming out now saying that they didn't make a bigger offer now that they have cap space. So we'll get into that a little bit more too with the Tanner Jeannot trade. But that's just my thoughts. I think obviously Utah is getting a stud defenseman, their number one guy.
yeah.
And I was a little bit surprised that they went with TG Ginla at the draft and didn't go with a defenseman. But if they had this cooking up, that makes sense.
Yeah. We talked about it. Dayton and I talked about it. They went forward heavy in the first round and didn't go for a defenseman. Well, they had plans, and we'll move on to that. John Marino also going to Utah. Dayton, now they have two great defensemen. Marino's that shutdown guy, and he went with a fifth round pick, and the Devils get a second rounder with that from this draft and then in the 2025 draft too. What do you think about that one? I mean, Marino was a really good guy for the Devils, but again, they need to create some room too, and they made another trade later on. We'll talk about too. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, I found that one a little surprising. Marino was kind of that big free agency signing just a couple of years
Yeah,
ago, and he was supposed to come in and stabilize the defense, and it seemed like he did. So to see him moved so quickly, I think is more so telling of what they want to do this offseason, which is clear up cap space to pursue some pretty big name free agents. And I think I heard it was Brett Pesce was on their radar.
yeah,
They want to make a big run at him. So you got to move somebody. Marino drew the short straw. The Devils get back, like you mentioned, a second round pick next year and a second round pick this year, which they used on a goalie, Mikhail Yegorov, who was the top ranked North American goalie. He's a raw goalie, but he's got size and he's got skills. I think he could be a pretty good pickup for them. The fifth rounder they sent back, it's a fifth rounder. See if it turns into anything. But no, I think it was a surprising trade, but overall I thought it was pretty solid.
Well, I mean, it makes sense if they're going after Pesci and they needed, again, the space to do it, to be able to put a good offer for him. And, Marino, he struggled last season. I mean, his first season was great with the Devils, but, everyone struggled with the Devils last season. So, and he was one of them. So, I mean, maybe trying to change the defense core a bit. And of course, they've got a new goalie too. So it kind of makes sense what they were doing, I think. And overall, we'll see how it all pans out. Right, you mentioned Jacob Tanner Jeannot, and he was traded as well, and creates more cap space for the Lightning, and he was traded to the Kings. And the way it all goes, Jeannot was traded for a lot of picks, and the Lightning don't really get that many back for him. They get a fourth round pick and a second rounder. I mean, that's okay, I guess. But they gave up. I mean, I don't know how many picks they gave up. It was
a first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and Cal foot.
Yeah, it was a lot of stuff. They didn't get a lot back. But what do you think about that going to the Kings? Again, the Kings are trying, changing their lineup too. They traded Dubois. Now they get Jeannot.
Yeah, so I got a text from my cousin today, who's just as big of a hockey nerd as us, and he said, "Is that close to a fireable offense for Julien Brisebois for this kind of turnover in a deal that shortly?" And I said, you know what? It's closer to a fireable offense for Rob Blake for paying a second and a fourth for Tanner Jeannot at this point. He doesn't bring much value. He was healthy scratched quite a bit in the season this year, if I'm not mistaken. He only played 55 games, 14 points, and makes $2.6 million. Dayton, we've talked about this on the Senators Roundtable quite a bit, looking for maybe a fourth or fifth for Matthew Joseph. Is Matthew Joseph not a lot more valuable than Tanner Jeannot is at this point? Tanner Jeannot brings the physicality, but Matthew Joseph gets more points. He's better defensively. He's faster. I don't know. I just don't get it at all. I don't understand it from LA's perspective at all. Getting two good picks for Tanner Jeannot is a huge success for Julien Brisebois.
Yeah. Jeannot seems to be a lot more valuable in, I guess, GM's eyes because, again, he's now been traded for, first and a bunch of other picks, and then now a second. All the picks that he's been traded for, that's a pretty good value for a guy that's probably a third line guy. I mean, he had a really good season with Nashville, that one season there, and that was why he was traded for that first round pick. But it didn't fit in Tampa. I mean, and now we'll see how he does in LA. I mean, the Kings kind of play a style that maybe he'll be good in, I think. So maybe he'll be good in LA, and these picks that Blake did give up is going to be a good trade in the end. All right, moving to goaltenders. And this is where we'll start with the first one here. Logan Thompson going to the Washington Capitals from the Vegas Golden Knights. And for a third round pick, 2/3 actually, one in 2024 and one in 2025. What do you think? I mean, we'll talk about later. They acquired another goalie later on to replace him. But now the Capitals have a tandem of two pretty cheap goaltenders. And I mean, arguably probably a 1A, 1B. What do you think about Thompson going to DC?
Yeah, so definitely, I don't think he was on anybody's radar of being moved, but that's how Vegas does, right?
Yeah.
They'll move anybody at any time if the offer is right, and I guess the offer was right for them for the two third-round picks. So he didn't even really have much of a regression this year. He took a minor step back, went from a 915 last season to a 908 save percentage this season. In the playoffs, though, he was still great. Had a 921 save percentage, was playing more games, looked really solid. I think he struggled with some injuries early on, if I'm not mistaken. I might be getting that confused with last season.
Or he was out for a lot of time last season, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. There's too many goalies that just kind of rotate in Vegas. I think that's a great acquisition for the Washington Capitals, and comparatively, they didn't have to pay very much to get him. It's somebody who could be a starting goalie for, pretty much anybody in the league right now. He has really good upside. And yeah, that's, Vegas, you never can predict what Vegas is doing, and the Capitals took advantage of that.
Yeah, and the thing is I mean, of course, everyone's gonna after the Golden Knights getting kicked pretty early in the playoffs, and they're gonna be forced or pressured to maybe make some moves. And of course, their cap situation isn't any good. It never is. They're always right up against it. They have to move some guys. Not sure if they're going to be able to re-sign Marchessault. And now their goaltending. I mean, Aiden Hill's a great goaltender, so he's our starter now for sure. And now we'll talk about the guy that they got, and that was Akira Schmid from the New Jersey Devils, and they had a little bit of a logjam with goaltenders, and now Schmid gets a chance to be a backup. This one is an interesting one to me. The Golden Knights getting Alexander Holtz, who was a high-end draft pick a couple years ago, and didn't seem to work out in New Jersey. Goes to Vegas for only Paul Cotter and a third-round pick in 2025. Is Paul Cotter that much worth that much for pretty much a top prospect and a potential starting goaltender maybe down the road? I'll get both your thoughts on this. I want to know both your thoughts on Jacob, what do you think about it? I mean, I think the Golden Knights just won this trade hands down.
I think it's undeniable that the Golden Knights won that trade. I'll start with what they got. So Akira Schmid, like you said, he prospect to be a potential starting goaltender down the road. He was the Devils' best goaltending prospect that they had. It's arguable between him and Nico Daws, but I think, in my opinion, it's Akira Schmid and Alexander Holtz, who is Cole Eiserman. Like, it's very similar prospect. Just pretty one-dimensional, has that good shot. He started taking some steps. He did some good things this year. Not quite where the Devils wanted him to be. I'm just pulling up his stats here. He had 16 goals in 82 games. So that's like pretty good for a prospect in his first full season. I think that there's still a lot of room to grow for him, and he could be a top 6 forward on Vegas as soon as this year. And I think that it's a huge win. As for Paul Cotter, I'm a huge fan of him. I think that he, especially with his $775,000 cap hit, I think he's extremely valuable. He's a great third line center. He had 25 points in 76 games this year, on pace for about 30 in a full season. He's pretty physical. He's good defensively. He's one of those. I wouldn't be surprised to see him turn into a Chandler Stevenson of Vegas. He definitely has that upside. He went undrafted. I believe. No, he was drafted in the 4th round by Vegas a couple years ago, 2018, I believe. He could turn into one of those kind of Chandler Stevenson players, or Anthony Cirelli, or one of those kind of players that I think New Jersey sees that in him. And at $775K for 2 seasons, I'd be willing to pay pretty big for that too. Maybe not that much. I think Vegas is still the clear winner, but I don't hate the trade from either side.
I mean, I'm really high on Holtz. Maybe I'm overvaluing him a bit. But I still love his upside. I think he's going to still be a 30 plus goal scorer just because of that shot. And he's really young still. I think adding Holtz in there, I think makes it more Vegas's side, but that's me. Dayton, what do you think about that? I know we talked a lot about Holtz during his draft year, how good he was, how good he's going to be. What do you think about the trade?
Initial reaction was definitely, this is a robbery from the Devils. Why are they giving up Holtz? Why are they only getting Cotter back? Like, this is strange. I think there is a little bit more logic to it than that. Like you said, Holtz hasn't really worked out in New Jersey. He did score 16 goals, but he's been given a lot of opportunities and he just hasn't really clicked. He hasn't been fantastic in the minors. A point per game in the AHL is still pretty good, but for somebody taken 7th overall in a very deep draft, you'd hope that they'd be in the NHL right now, right? They were hoping for Lucas Raymond, or like they were teammates, right? You should have been kind of in that same area, and Raymond is not anywhere close to where Holtz is right now. Holtz is struggling. Okay, so there's that. Cotter is surprisingly solid too. He had 25 points last year or I guess this season in 76 games, 41 penalty minutes. That is very close to what Holtz put up. They also only have, both of them, 3 seasons in the NHL. And Cotter took a roster spot pretty commandingly with the Vegas Golden Knights, who have a very deep roster. So I think that's another positive sign for acquiring him. And I think the last piece of consideration for the Devils was Holtz's contract is up at the end of the year. He will require an extension, and as a 7th overall pick, he's going to be looking for some money because there is that potential he could become a 30 goal scorer in the NHL. And you have to take that into consideration when you're signing. I don't think the Devils wanted to sign him long term, and I don't think they wanted to deal with that because they are trying to get some really big names for this year. They are in a win now mode, and Holtz just wasn't helping them win now, so he became a trade casualty.
Yeah, and I think the Golden Knights, they're going to end up benefiting from it. Like I said, I still have a lot of hope that Holtz can become that type of goal scorer. And yeah, he just didn't really fit in New Jersey, and we'll see how he does in Vegas. But I think he still has a lot of skill, and that shot alone will get him to score goals. It's just, and playing with some really skilled players in Vegas, he'll be able to, he'll get a lot of opportunities again, and we'll see if he takes advantage of it. Because they do got a lot of talent, and he'll be able to play with some really good players. So could play with Jack Eichel. That's a pretty good center to play with. And that's going to be up to him. Let's see how he does. All right. Well, those are the bigger trades. Kevin Hayes also got moved to the Pittsburgh Penguins. This is again a salary dump. I mean, this is a guy that was, he's getting paid quite a bit still. Quickly, I mean, Jacob, do you think anything that'll move the needle for Pittsburgh at all? Or, I mean, Hayes wasn't very good in St. Louis.
No, I mean, he's a 40-point guy at the most now. He's making $7 million. I don't understand why Kyle Dubas would make that trade at all. Isn't that like exactly what Kyle Dubas was saying that he's trying to get Pittsburgh out of, is the acquiring players like in the same age group or whatever as Chris Letang, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Erik Karlsson. Like, it's time to move out of that. It's time to get younger. This is not helping, especially at $7 million. It's not, I don't understand it at all.
Yeah, I'm not, when I saw it, I'm like, Hayes gets moved again. This is like so many guys that you're like, they never can get moved because of their contract, yet Hayes has now been moved twice. And with that same contract, I don't understand. Maybe other teams see things in them, and for that money, I don't know.
Well, and they're talking about trading Riley Smith because of his salary cap or his cap hit. That's like, I'd much rather take Riley Smith than Kevin Hayes at this point.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. All right, let's move to the big event of the day. I mean, that was the draft, and that finished it. And the Sphere was amazing. We said it on the show last night, and I still think the NHL just to say we're going to do this here all the time. I mean, why not? I know they're changing the whole format now, and it's not going to be the same moving forward. But I mean, I don't know. It was a success in my mind of how well it was executed, and the visuals on TV were great. I got Dayton's thoughts on the first round, but quickly, Jacob, what did you think about the first round and the picks and, our overall takeaways from that?
I think that it was a really boring first round because there were no surprises. Like, other than Demidov falling to 5 and Seneca going to 3, in which, honestly, Seneca, I expected that because I saw quite a few reports before the draft saying, look out for this. Anaheim really likes him. There was no surprises. The content was excellent. I loved the watching it from the Sphere. And I will say, back to the award show, just backing up an extra day, I think that Matt Friend did a fantastic job hosting the award show, and it really sucks that none of the NHL players in this league have a personality, because he did a fantastic job.
Yeah, too bad. That's the problem, I guess. Yeah, there weren't. I mean, I was surprised that Seneca went third overall, but yeah, there was a bit of chatter about it. But yeah, overall, I mean, Cole Eiserman dropping, we kind of were talking about him dropping that far, and it happened. But yeah, I guess looking back, there wasn't really any big ones where you're like, oh my gosh, what happened? I mean, why did the guy drop all the way down here, or why did the guy raise so much? There's a bit more drama in the last couple drafts in that case, especially the draft of Slavkovsky. We didn't know who was going to go first overall, and there was surprise with Shane Wright dropping so far, and he was supposed to be first overall. But yeah, but overall, I think the atmosphere and the way that it was done, I think the first round was great, like you said about the content. Yeah, it was good. All right, moving to the rest of it. Dayton, I'll talk, there was a lot of, I mean, once the second round got going, the picks started going a bit quicker as it always happens. But what'd you think about the whole draft in general, the players that were drafted, any surprises that you saw? What'd you think about it?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. It had several surprises as the draft kind of went on. First, I think most notably, Aaron Kiviharju falling to, was that the fourth round?
It was the fourth round, yeah.
Fourth round.
There was no way that Aaron Kiviharju should have fallen to the fourth round. That's a guy who should have been in the first or just barely in the second. But he's a little guy, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's primarily what tanked his draft status. He had that injury, but he looked like he came back from it okay. And Adam Yurchek was drafted highly, and he had an injury that took him out of everything.
Yeah.
So I don't think those guys were leagues apart. So that was definitely the biggest surprise. Second biggest one was Ryerson Leenders falling to the seventh round. One of the best goalies available in North America, to be sure. He did drop a little bit based on some injuries in the playoffs and some inconsistency, but very, very athletic goalie. He makes saves. He makes them look easy, highlight real stuff. I don't know how he ended up in the seventh round. What there was so many like weird no-name goalies taken before him, and just waiting. Like where's Leenders? Those were definitely the two biggest surprises for me. But it was fun seeing all of these guys that we'd researched and looked up and scouted for months and months finally find their home.
Yeah. I mean, Leenders, I was surprised. I'm like, when I saw him, like, he hasn't been drafted yet? What are you talking about? Like, I thought he was already drafted. And you look and I'm like, oh, he wasn't. Yeah, I don't know. He could, well, look, Henrik Lundqvist went what, sixth round?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I mean, you don't know. I mean, some of these goalies, some teams just don't have the confidence in drafting these guys higher than that area. And I mean, there is a lot of uncertainty in goaltending. We all know that. But I really think he should have been at least, I don't know, third round, second round. I mean, we were talking about him being maybe the first goaltender off the board at times there. And Ilya Nabokov went where we kind of thought he was going to.
Where I thought he was going to go to. Everybody told me no, that's way too high.
I had him 52nd, I think, in my final ranking, and I thought that was a pretty fair placing for one of the most interesting goalies of the draft. But no, he went really high.
I said 39, and he went 38.
Yeah. Well, we said on Prospect Corner, we're talking about early. I think Peter was saying, he said he could have been really early on in the second round. So yeah, Peter was with you, Jacob.
Everybody told me I was wrong.
All right. Well, Jacob, what did you think about the rest of the draft? Any surprises for you?
Yeah, Kiviharju, that's a pretty obvious one. Dayton already mentioned. Another one that Dayton and I chatted about today was Justin Poirier, and he went 156th to the Carolina Hurricanes. And I understand that he is, yeah. I don't know how he went so far down the draft. But yeah, 5'8" guy. That's why he went so far down the draft. He is the first player that is 17 years old to score 50 goals in the QMJHL since Sidney Crosby.
Like,
how do you let him fall to the fifth round? I don't understand. I think that was the biggest surprise for me.
Well, and guess who gets them? The Carolina Hurricanes. I was about to message Dayton about that. I'm like, well, of course it's the Hurricanes, and he had just messaged the channel, the draft channel about it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think a lot of people were probably like, yeah, the Hurricanes always go for these guys, and they always seem to pan out. I mean, they're not
Weird.
afraid.
Weird how that works.
They're not
Yeah.
afraid to pick these guys.
Not at all.
And they end up hitting. I mean, and I really have no doubt that he probably will. You're probably going to see him in the NHL, and that's something that, I mean, undersized,
Yeah. But he's like not even that small. He's, almost 180 pounds at 5'8". He's a solid like train.
He plays closer to 5'11" than 5'8".
He does not look that small when he's playing out there.
Yeah.
So I mean, what happens, we always say it, undersized guys get looked over, and then they actually do well, and then no one learns.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about just a couple guys that we had profiles for, maybe guys that we thought, yeah, definitely going to get drafted. Just one each here, because we're gonna have a huge episode of Prospect Corner. I'm talking all about this, but Dayton, one guy that you were surprised was not drafted.
Daniil Ustenkov, the defenseman out of Switzerland. He at one point was being projected to be a first-round pick. I watched him. I didn't love some of his game. I thought he was a little bit too patient in areas, so I put him conservatively down in the 3rd round. He wasn't picked at all. Like, he's not small. He's 6'1". He's a right shot defender, I think. No, that's someone else. He's a left shot, but he plays a pretty simple, straightforward game. I don't know how nobody took a chance on him.
Yeah, I don't get why I don't take flyers on some of these guys. Just later on, I mean, what do you got to lose, really? But yeah, it's projected to be that high. I don't know why he wasn't drafted either. Jacob, what about you?
There's a few names that didn't get drafted, that we had our profiles for, but I'm going to go with Gabriel Frasca. I'm quite surprised that he didn't get drafted. I'm surprised he fell out of the 3rd round, and I'm surprised that he didn't get drafted at all. He played with Kingston this year. He's a really good 2-way player. 32 points in 44 games. Like, that's solid production from an OHL. I can't remember if he's a rookie or if he's a sophomore in that league, but he's a solid 2-way player, and one of those guys that a team looks at and says, this guy's going to be a safer bet than others. Like, he's not very risky. And I'm just surprised that he didn't get drafted at all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the same comments. I don't know why some of these guys drop so far or don't get drafted at all. One for me is Alexander Zetterberg. I mean, yeah, again, the size, he is small, lots of skill, and I thought 6th, 7th round, and then when the Canucks had some 6th and 7th rounds, he's Swedish. Come on, pick him. They don't pick him. They did pick some Swedes. And also Jack Bodine. I was really surprised that he wasn't drafted either. I mean, he's a very simple defenseman. He's a good hitter. He probably doesn't have a lot of upside offensively. Maybe a bottom pairing defenseman, but I think he was worth taking a flyer on, but he wasn't drafted either. Those two for me were my biggest surprise. For sure, Zetterberg, because we were talking about him maybe in the 3rd round. There was talk maybe 2nd round, but his size, ultimately, I think that's just what happens. And he's still available, and we'll see if he'll get drafted next year in the draft. But I was really surprised by Zetterberg not just going in the 7th round. I mean, I would think a team would just take a chance on just his skill alone, but didn't happen. All right, quickly, a winner and a loser from the draft. Dayton.
All right, winner. I'm going to go with the Calgary Flames. They took several of the guys I was watching. Luke Misa somehow fell to 150th. That's the Flames scooped him up. Henry Muse, they picked up at 74th, and Andrew Basha at 41st. I think those are all really, really good players. I think they all could have been 1st-round picks at one point. They weren't, and the Flames took them. I think that was fantastic on their part. They also got a lot of really good guys in Jacob Battaglia, I think, Hunter Lang, Eric Jameson, Matt Greeden, could be a hit or a miss. But Zane Parekh with their first pick, yeah, really, really solid. I'm really, really impressed with what the Flames did. Loser, I'm going to go with the Toronto Maple Leafs because they didn't pick anybody. And maybe that's a little harsh on Ben Danford, who is easily the best guy that they took. But he's a defensive defenseman. He had half a point a game. He is what he is. I think everyone else they selected is a shot in the dark, and I wouldn't be surprised if none of them panned out. Yeah, it's, I think, just kind of a waste of a draft for the Leafs this year.
Jacob, what about you? A winner and a loser?
I do just want to go back to the Zetterberg comments that you said you're surprised nobody took him in the 7th round. Remember the last Zetterberg that got taken in the 7th round?
Yeah.
Yeah. But my winner is easily, without question, the Minnesota Wild. They got probably the best value per pick with Zeev Buium, Ryder Ritchie, and Aaron Kiviharju. Those 3 picks alone, like if they didn't make any other picks in this draft, I still think that they're the winners. That adds so much depth to their already strong depth charts, and especially on defense. You're gonna have Brock Faber, Zeev Buium, and Aaron Kiviharju in a couple of years. I don't think that that's very fair for the rest of the league, if I'm going to be honest.
Ryder
and
ended up going to Minnesota.
What'd you say?
Ryder Ritchie, he also went to Minnesota.
Did I not say him?
Yeah, he said Ryder Ritchie. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
You had me questioning myself. Loser of the draft for me was also Toronto, just because they did not do much. And it's as simple as that. If I had to pick another, off the top of my head, I might say Ottawa, and not just because Gabriel Eliasson was a interesting pick. I'm not going to hate on it yet. I'm going to do some more digging into him personally. They just went with big and a lot of risky picks, but their smallest player is 6'2", and their lightest player was 181 pounds. you can't teach size, and not a lot of big skill guys, just a lot of really risky picks. I don't hate their draft, but I just think that they didn't go with very many safe picks in a time that they needed to go with a lot of safe picks.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I agree with Toronto. I looked at all their names and I'm like, who? Yeah. Like, and even Peter, he's like, this is gonna be a quick one. I don't know a lot of these players. Yeah, a lot of quick. I mean, the thing is, I mean, maybe some of them pan out, and we didn't think Easton Cowan was a good pick in the first round last year. Turns out it was pretty good. Ben Danford, I think, is going to end up being pretty good too.
I do like that pick.
That was a good pick.
That was a good pick.
Yeah. And I think overall, the draft it was very underwhelming, but you never know. You never know with some of these guys, right? So I think my winner was the Minnesota Wild, in my opinion. Those defensemen that they got, they really bolstered a part of their prospect pool that's very weak. And now they got legitimately probably 3 guys that could be top 4. I mean, definitely Buium and Kiviharju has a lot of upside, even though he's undersized and he does have some developing to do. But I messaged Mariah, who covers the Wild, and I said, you've got to steal with Kiviharju. I mean, this guy's great. He should have been a first-round pick, and you get him in the fourth round. So
and undersized, he's 5'10", 165 pounds. Like, he's not tiny.
No, but they say undersized, and that's I don't know. and the Wild have had success with undersized defensemen. Jared Spurgeon,
exactly.
He's a lot smaller, obviously, but he doesn't play that way. And that's, I think, Kiviharju doesn't have that same physicality. He doesn't block shots like Spurgeon does, but that can be developed, I guess. We'll see. We'll dive into all the draft classes through Prospect Corner throughout the summer. We're going to do that. And of course, Senators Roundtable. You guys are going to go a whole episode about the Senators draft class. So stay tuned for that. Make sure to check out all of our stuff at thehockeywriters.com. We've got draft recaps coming out, already out, or they're coming as you're watching this. So make sure to check in all of our stuff post draft. And then of course, free agency is just around the corner. So no rest. We've got a lot of stuff coming out. So make sure to checking all that out. And until our next episode, we'll see you next time.